Hey guys, it's Nathan from the Kentucky Cycling YouTube channel. Welcome to the next Zoom interview in the Kentucky Cycling Connection series. I'm happy to introduce my guest today, who is the president of the Kentucky Mountain Bike Association, or KyMBA Louisville Chapter, who is Nicole Gray. Nicole, welcome.
Yeah.
Before we dive into some questions about KyMBA Louisville, why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, including how you got into cycling.
So I grew up in New Jersey. I've lived in Louisville since 2005, and cycling's what brought me here, funny enough. I have an older brother. Growing up, he was like really into BMX stuff, and he would always build these janky ramps in our yard, like some 2x4s and plywood. So he would always kind of get me to ride stuff with him. And my mom was cool enough to let him build some, like rollers and berms in our backyard at the time. And then he's quite a bit older than me. So as he grew up, I kind of didn't ride so much. Then when I went to college, I originally went to college in Pennsylvania, by Erie, Pennsylvania, and there was quite a big BMX scene there. So I kind of got back into riding bikes. And then I had the opportunity in my third year of college to go work at Camp Woodward in Pennsylvania that teaches, BMX and skateboarding, which is like Disney World for that kind of stuff. There's tons of stuff to do. So that kind of started my real love of riding bikes. So when I decided to transfer schools, I had been to Louisville a few times and was like, well, they have a 24-hour free concrete skate park. That was awesome. So I was like, well, I'll just transfer schools because of that. So I came and moved to Louisville, and I kind of stayed. And as I've gotten older, BMX is not really that easy. So I decided, to kind of get into mountain biking. And it's funny because some of the guys that I rode BMX with are still the guys I ride mountain bikes with. So it's kind of like the natural progression, I guess, in a lot of ways, but just on and off through the years. But it ended up that that's what brought me here, and I've stayed.
That's cool.
After I graduated.
That's cool. Do you still make your way out to the skate park at all?
I do, but it's like really early in the morning when like nobody's around. I hate getting in everybody's way, and it's a different thing. They've renovated it since I rode there, and sometimes when you don't do that often, you're like, oh, like I kind of got to get my bearings again. And I do sometimes still go down there. It's fun, but it's different. You got to know your limitations as you're not like 20.
Sure. And when you go out there, do you still have a BMX bike, or do you do this on your mountain bike?
I do, but I actually have a dirt jump bike as well. And that's usually what I take is the dirt jump bike. I'll take that on there.
Cool. Well, sounds like you've been a bit of a dirt junkie most of your life, I'd say. So you mentioned BMX and mountain biking. Do you do any other forms of cycling?
I have a road bike, but I get really nervous on the road. So I'll take it to like the Parklands and ride the loop and stuff. Yeah, so I kind of have different types of bikes. So I do like downhill mountain biking, and I have a road bike, and I have a dirt jumper. I still have a BMX bike, so I kind of feel like I do a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you like to get a little air, so to speak. In addition to that sort of rush, of adrenaline that comes with that, what is it that would you say appeals to you about mountain biking over other forms of cycling?
I really like to be like in the woods, and there's so many times that you're mountain biking and you see something that necessarily you wouldn't if you were maybe on a road, or even, if you're driving through somewhere. There's always something like exciting you find. Like you go to North Carolina and you're just riding, down a trail. There's like amazing waterfalls and, beautiful like laurel trees. And I really like all the outdoor aspects of riding mountain bikes. It's just so cool to be out in the woods, and it's super quiet. And I just feel like it's a good time to like kind of unwind and get your head back together after a work week or whatever.
Cool. How did you first become involved with KyMBA Louisville?
I got invited to one of the meetings. I knew some of the other people on the board at the time. And in talking to them, they needed someone to kind of help with the event stuff. Usually we do a large event every February, the Cabin Fever Reliever. And they were like, we really need somebody to help kind of work on that. And it's a big project. So I was like, yeah, I can do that. So I kind of started doing the event stuff, and we did a movie premiere a couple summers back for like a new video and stuff. So I've kind of put some things together. And then when the former president was going to step down, they just asked if I would have any interest. And I was like, well, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Like, I could try. I'll do my best.
Well, on behalf of mountain bikers, in Louisville beyond, thank you for your service. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to share my screen and bring up the KyMBA Louisville website, since I think it's going to help frame our discussion a little bit. So if it's all right, I'm actually going to scroll down here to the bottom of the page, because we actually get a nice little overview of the work that you guys are responsible for. So you have 6 parks with 67 miles of trail and 176 members and growing. And if we scroll up, we actually see a list of the 6 parks. So just at a real high level, can you tell me about each of the 6 parks and where they're located? I noticed that most of them are actually in Louisville, Jefferson County, but they've got a couple that are sort of, in the surrounding area as well.
So Cherokee and Seneca is right here close to downtown Louisville. I live a mile or less from the park. So that's kind of like our more urban park. The Silo Bike Center is actually out at the Parklands, which is in more the east end of Jefferson County. So that's kind of part of that. Turkey Run is the other piece of that. So they're both out there. Parklands is pretty large. So those are more like where the Silo Center part of the park is. Waverly is in out towards like Dixie Highway area in Louisville. Abandoned Woods is out in actually Corydon, Indiana. And then Fort Duffield, which I know Lincoln Trails is kind of adopted, but we include that just because it's kind of close to the area as part, as an update for people. But that's out going towards Fort Knox.
So I want to get into some detail. The site actually goes into some detail about each of these sites, but I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing here in the form of these trail conditions. If you could speak to the different trail conditions we're seeing here on the page.
Work is linked to Trail Forks for trail conditions. KyMBA used to update it all constantly. We all live all over town. So some people maybe don't live, right down from Turkey Run. So people would be like, well, what's the trail status? I'm super sure. So we wanted to make it more interactive for the community. So if you're someone and you live by Turkey Run and you ride there all the time, kind of letting people update things as they see them, which not everybody has the same trail rating system. So it's not a perfect answer, but I feel like it's better than just not updating something or just guessing. So you can see Cherokee's is listed as ideal, which was on the 8th, which is several days ago. And we've had a bunch of rain since then, but I'm guessing with all the rain, no one's been out, so no one's updated that.
So it's kind of user driven, kind of like Waze or something is?
Trail Forks actually is a way, if you link it to your Strava, it'll ask you the question, how are the trails? It's just getting people to kind of move to this. This is all like way newer than everybody's used to KyMBA updating it all the time. Yeah. And we're like, let's try it. We'll just try this. We'll try this and see kind of how it goes. Some of it's working pretty well. And then it's funny because Abandoned Woods has Fire Tower as, variable on December 11th. Well, that trail takes forever to dry out, and most people locally kind of know that one's not always the easiest one to ride, especially during these months. So I think in some of these cases, it's like, oh, well, it's not updated because, no one's really been out there, or it's just kind of the way it goes. And the bike park is obviously closed, which that's determined by the Parklands, not by us. So we just have it listed there.
Okay, well that's really cool, and I think it's also pretty cool that it's more granular than just a rating for the whole trail system. It's actually commenting. Your users are commenting on individual trails within a park, right?
Yeah, and that's what's nice, because like I said, this Fire Tower trail stays typically wet longer. So there may be other trails out there that you can ride, and those are great, but one is bad. I think it gives a better understanding of okay, well, you can go ride, but just don't ride this trail, ride these trails, or, however it kind of breaks down. I just think it's a little nicer that way, but.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that you're utilizing Trail Forks for reporting trail conditions. Would you say that Trail Forks is also the best resource for folks who are looking for a way to navigate the various parks?
You still can use MTB project, and I know, and Trail Forks also. I mean, they both have good updated information. I personally just like the way Trail Forks looks a little better. I've had some experiences out of town where MTB project has taken me like the not best direction. So I use Trail Forks personally. And I know there were concerns because Trail Forks was going to start charging. However, they have a free 30-mile radius. So if you're at home in Louisville, you could pick up pretty much every park on the free version of Trail Forks. I just like the way that their format is. I like that you can update trail statuses through there and that we have a plugin, it feeds right to the website.
Yeah, and so in addition to navigation, that they actually have the added benefit of being able to contribute to trail conditions. So there's sort of a little extra incentive there to kind of play a role in reporting back on trail conditions. So it's pretty cool. On this site here, you mentioned there's 67 miles of trail. Can you tell me which is your shortest trail system versus your longest trail system?
I think at this point, just the cross-country type trails at Turkey Run are probably I would guess they're the shortest. If you link Cherokee and Seneca together, the runner loop that's just in Cherokee is only maybe 3 or 4 or so. If you're just doing in the park, it's when you ride out to the other section that you kind of link together more miles there. So Turkey Run doesn't have a ton of mileage if you don't include that bike park. And then the longest trail system is O'Bannon Woods, because there's not only in the park trails, there's something called the Adventure Trail, which is more backcountry, but it's about 20 more miles. So.
Oh, wow. And then you mentioned, there's 176 members and growing. So can you just, we'll get into more details about this later, but can you just tell me a little bit about the KyMBA Louisville community and why someone might want to consider joining?
We do a lot of more maintenance stuff at this point. O'Bannon currently has a reroute trail going in. That's a completely new trail that's been worked on. COVID kind of stopped that early. So when people join, we take the money and we have to weed eat Seneca. It grows up like a jungle pretty quickly. They did clear out a lot of invasive species, so it's better, but there's still the entrance into that section grows up with this grass and you can barely see through it. So for us to have weed eaters, maintain weed eaters, have gas for weed eaters, we have a trailer that we have to take. So all of those things cost money. Yeah. So for us to do any of the maintenance or fix anything, we still have to have, members to donate for that, and also their time. This past year was a little different because of all the COVID and the restrictions. And we did a weed eater day, the one day that was just kind of mostly club people, because they asked us not to do a full-blown trail day because of, social distancing. And to do weed eating in Cherokee, Seneca, we have to be certified. And they were like, oh, we don't really, can you just use certified people you already have? And, for us to do those things, it's volunteers, it's the money to be able to do those things and to maintain the equipment we do have. I mean, all that factors in. Not only that, we have to have insurance for us to do things like that. That's just kind of the way it is with everything. There's tons of stuff that are added costs that people's membership go to.
Yeah.
That I don't think people always kind of see that side. So
right.
We also have the online waiver platform, because, you're going to trail days and you're signing these papers on a clipboard somewhere. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't really do me any good sometimes. So we started this online waiver program so that we can just send a link to people before a trail day, or before COVID, we had previously been doing group rides. So for our insurance, we have to have all that stuff. So paying for things like that, it's, all those costs kind of add up. So,
yeah, for sure.
Remember, so we can do things.
Right. So long story short, these trails don't maintain themselves, right? So, yeah, this is, there's lots of ways to contribute, starting with membership dollars and man hours. And so it's great to give back and be able to contribute. So it's all very good stuff. All right. So in terms of your trails, if it's all right, what I'd like to ask you to do is kind of walk us through each of these trails, but rather than just going in the order we see them on the screen, if you'll start with what you think is the most beginner friendly trail and kind of work your way up to the most advanced trail.
I would say The Parklands is definitely the most beginner-friendly trail system.
We're talking about Turkey Run.
I would say Turkey Run. Well, the bike park does have, they have a little skills area that's, got different little like ladders you can ride on and things to kind of maybe get you more used to different things you might encounter on a trail.
So let's start talking about tell us about the bike park, because I think that's a fairly unique resource. I mean, there's not I know of a couple other bike parks around, but I know this was a big deal when it got developed and put out there. So tell us about the bike park and some of the resources that are there.
There is a little skills area. It has like different little wood features that you can kind of learn to roll on or whatever things you might want to do. That's kind of a cool little area that we don't have that anywhere else. There's also 2 different pump tracks. There's a small pump track that's really approachable, especially I see a lot of kids. I mean, I like the small little pump track myself, but it's a great place to like kind of have kids learn, that rhythm of like how to pump over something. And it's kind of fun. So they have 2 different pump tracks. One's a little bigger, with like kind of a little starting hill. And then you have some green like bike park trails. There's like Flying Pig and so anyway, you have the option to either make it shorter or longer, and the returns put you out on the little paved path. So it's not a crazy climb back. It's really approachable. So, and it's got some good features in there, different types of berms. And I think it's a great thing to kind of ease you into, different types of trails. And the fact that you can cut it short or make it longer, I think is great for people. And then the paved path, that's an easy take your time back, and it's not like you're climbing some crazy Rudy single track. That's really nice to have. And then they have some more advanced stuff with some jumps. They have a wall ride. So, it does have a variety of different things. So that's great. It's like everything's return trails are easy. It's kind of choose your own adventure, make it what you want. There's different like side hits on some of the more advanced trails. They have like little ladder bridges you can kind of jump off. And I think it's fun to kind of go out there and
good place to build your skills, right?
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it's definitely got some skills building, and I think it's great, especially with all this pandemic stuff, for people to get out, and it's got some space, so that's nice. And then the Turkey Run trails are really beginner friendly. It's not anything, I don't think the climbs are super crazy. They're probably a little rough at first. As anything in mountain biking, when you first start, it's kind of takes some getting used to, but I think it's definitely needed for the area to have something that's more where you can start, and then each trail there can be progressively more difficult if you choose to do some of the other ones or go back to the bike park. Or
so in terms of the relationship or I guess proximity to each other, so it's been a few years. I've ridden at Turkey Run, but the bike park was actually closed at the time, and I know we got to one point in the trail where you could actually see the bike park. So can you like park one place and then kind of just go from your bike, both the bike park and the trail, or do you really is it like you have to get back in your car and go back over to the bike park?
There's actually 2 different parking lots you can ride from. There's one that you can actually ride in like on the cross-country trails to the bike park. And then there is a parking lot for the Silo Center, which you just pedal on a little paved path, and the bike park will be like to the right, and then the trails are off to the left. So, it's really, you can kind of pick what you want to do. The nice thing about having that second parking lot that's like you can ride the XC trails, sometimes they have weddings at the Silo Center and they close that whole parking lot. So depending on what time of day you go, it's good to have another option that, yes, you can ride those trails over to that area, so that if they do have the parking lot closed for a wedding, which they usually post on their website when they're going to do that, you can still go ride. So that's kind of nice to know.
Cool. Is there any charge for like the Silo bike park?
Nope, it's free. But they are a private park and rely on donations. So if you love that bike park, you could totally donate to them. to keep them kind of going.
Good deal. All right.
So,
Well, so working our way up the food chain, what would you say is the next trail that we should look at?
if it were me, progressively, I would think Waverly would be the next after kind of the Parklands and the Silo Center and stuff. You know, Waverly is super fun and flowy. You know, it's not crazy miles, but you can kind of link it together and make it more if you choose to. The climbs are going to be a little harder, but still not awful, I don't think.
Yeah.
So I think it's another good place to like build your skills. And there's one little log crossing, and then there's some little logs piled up on another section. But besides that, it's not like super technical or any of those kind of things. So I think it's a good step up when you're ready to kind of be like, okay, well, like what's a good fun flowy where like can kind of loop together and create some extra miles and stuff.
Yeah, and you hear, you know, these different adjectives that are used to describe trails, and I definitely think flowy applies, particularly like on the clinic loop. The first time we rode out there, we started from that parking lot that's close to the little playground. We made our way around the trail, and once we got to the clinic loop and kind of, you know, went down, then we realized, oh, there's the trail you can head back up, and we went around that like 3 times. I mean, it was just so much fun to go. It's, if not the flowiest, one of the flowiest trails in the state of Kentucky.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely flowy, and it's nice that you can either take like there's a hard left and you can go over on that golf course loop, or you can do exactly what you said. You can just take that one little trail back up. It takes you right back to almost that intersection. And I mean, it's super fun because you can just loop that all day. And a couple of years ago, we did do a project out there where we fixed some drainage and put a ton. I mean, we had a couple tons of rock that we laid, especially at the bottom there after that clinic loop where it kept just holding water. And so now there's like a really nice rock, really smooth rock area to kind of mitigate all those problems that were there. So,
all right. So we've talked about Silo Bike Park, Cherokee Run, and Waverly. So stepping up in terms of our skills, where do we go next?
I would say, I guess Cherokee.
Okay.
You know, so when I first started riding mountain bikes, the options really were like Cherokee and Waverly and Duffield pretty much. O'Bannon had a very like, they only had like a little lollipop loop. So Cherokee was like everybody rode, but now, you know, it's a lot more technical, especially as time has gone on. It's a super heavily traveled park. So, you know, that kind of is an added difficulty. You know, you have to make sure you're able to let people pass you, just because you do encounter so many people walking their dogs or running or hiking. And especially, you know, I've seen since the pandemic stuff had started, I mean, there's just a ton of people in that park all the time. I mean, like your lunch ride that took, you know, under an hour can be way longer because you're like, there's 6, you know, you keep running into dog walkers and you want to be, you know, respectful and everything. So it is definitely like a way more utilized park, and it's super fun. And like, if you want rocks and you want roots, like this is the place. It's, you know, in the city here, it's definitely got more of that kind of stuff.
And you know, for those who may not know, so you know, Frederick Law Olmsted designed a lot of the Louisville parks, and he's a landscape architect for places like Central Park in New York and Biltmore Estate, among others. So you know, you really Cherokee's a cool place to ride because it is all those technical features like you're saying, but then it's also this really nicely kind of landscaped area, and there's creeks, and you know, there's, I mean, it's very scenic, you know, in addition to those technical features. And we're seeing like blue and green on the map here. So for those newer riders who may be new to this and might just be getting out on trail forks, you know, for the first time, can you kind of talk about what the colors mean when they're looking at these trails?
Each trail is rated differently. Green trails are usually going to be your easier trail. Blue trails like your next one up, and then you get into like your blacks. I always tell people not all trail systems are rated equally. What a blue is here may not be a blue somewhere else. So always take that kind of with a grain of salt, that each area kind of rates their trails in a different way, just depending on what it has, feature wise, or different grades of steepness, and you get into all these different criteria. So the green would be obviously the easier ones. The blue are going to be your next hardest groups. And Cherokee doesn't have any black, so
yeah. So basically beginner and intermediate. And I think you make an excellent point about these ratings. I mean, I think the trail stewards are kind of coming up with these ratings, and they're doing the best they can. But it's all kind of relative to what's around them, right? And what their experience is in that kind of region. So, what we think of as intermediate, if we went out to Colorado or, someplace, I mean, it might present very differently. So these are beginner and intermediate trails as we see in this region.
Yes.
Fair? Okay.
Yes, I would definitely say that's fair. And you can see here how like there's a blue-green loop, and then it kind of separates, and then there's another blue-green loop. That's the difference of the Cherokee side versus the Seneca. So you can just do. So
you got Cherokee
one or other.
No, Seneca's Cherokee's on the left side, and Seneca's on the right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's the other. Yeah. So you can do just one loop.
Oh, look at that. Okay. I didn't know about this. I'm not reading over here. That's cool.
So that's the wilderness loop. That's where they've done a lot of work with this invasive species, this honeysuckle and stuff. So it's really clear, like cleared out now. So it's a little confusing looking if you're used to seeing it the other way. So just people get lost in there all the time. They're like, I'm so turned around, and I'm like, oh, let's just kind of, you can see it's all zigzaggy. And it's fun. It's fun.
Lots of switchbacks. So that's cool. All right. Well, cool. Do you have any? So it looks like there's about 8 miles of trail between the two. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah.
All right. So stepping up, where are we going to go next?
See, I feel like it's really a tie.
Okay.
I mean, Fort Duffield is definitely rough and rowdy, and the climbs are not easy. So O'Bannon has like some flow rowdy. So I mean, it's kind of, both of those seem to kind of fit.
All right. Well, if you don't mind, let's talk about Fort Duffield first. I know O'Bannon is getting a lot of your all's attention these days. So why don't we kind of say what might be sort of your premier park for last? All right. So talk to me about Fort Duffield.
I personally really like Fort Duffield. I think it's got so many different options. It doesn't seem like a lot with, 6 miles? Like, don't have my glasses on. So.
Yeah, that's what it says.
So it's 6 miles, but the way you can link some of these trails together, I mean, you could be out there all day. And the great thing is it's not as heavily traveled as some of the other parks. It's beautiful out there. You can kind of get up on a scenic ridge and kind of see the Ohio River and stuff. I mean, it's really a nice park. Plus, there's the historic fort stuff, which is really cool. It's like a good part of history and stuff. If you ever, just want to take the time to check that out, of course, don't put your bikes on that or anything, but it has like a really cool jump line. It has an old school like slalom track that is, I mean, one of my favorite ones.
Is that this black? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great, like, I like Fort Duffield as like a practice if you're going to go like other places. Like, if you're going to go ride in like North Carolina and you've got to ride some like just kind of rugged stuff. I mean, they have a lot of rugged stuff. Their, terrain also dries better than a lot of the other parks. I mean, I feel like it's like the freak of nature as far as the way that it dries. And I guess because it's so steep. But then they have, some downhill trails.
Yeah, so I'm noticing the downhill trail. So I guess is this kind of the center, is it like a peak and you have to kind of make your way up to the top and then have various ways back down?
Yeah, so it's kind of, you can either, there's a couple different ways you can get to the top, but essentially you get to the top. For the slalom trail, you're close to where the fort is.
Okay.
For some of these other downhill trails, you kind of go out on another ridge, and you come down on the backside of the park, which is kind of separate from these other ones. So you can kind of pick how much you want to climb or how much you don't want to climb. And there's also a road that it's gated, but you can ride up it. So if you're just like, I don't want to keep climbing the same climb, you can take the road. It's a steep road, but I mean, it's quick, it's over. So I mean, it's definitely got some options for you and stuff.
Okay, so it's a little more wild and rustic, and I guess technical as a result. So I guess you want somebody who's really more with that intermediate skill set or potentially higher, and then this is going to appeal towards, at least sections of this park sounds like are going to appeal towards somebody who's more on like the enduro or downhill end of the spectrum, would you say?
I would say so. When I bought a downhill bike, I actually took it to Fort Duffield to like kind of get things set up right, because you could push up that road and then take it down. So it's good for stuff like that. But yeah, they do a cross country race out there. So I mean, it's not to say that it's not like that, but
okay.
As you can see,
they've got a mix.
Yeah, it's a mix. I mean, everything in Louisville's a mix. You have people that ride all kinds of different stuff, but you can see there's only one little green on this one.
Right.
It's mostly graded as blue and stuff, but
right.
Which I'm not even sure what that green one is, because it says unknown.
Yeah, it says unknown. Last but certainly not least, and I've never ridden out there, but I've heard a lot of people talk about it, is O'Bannon Woods, which is, it's sort of Kentuckiana, if you will. So across the river from you guys, right?
Yeah, so it's across the river.
Yeah.
It's not in Kentucky, it's in Corydon. This is actually a project that KyMBA and HyMBA do together. A lot of people from Louisville ride out there, so it's kind of got a lot of support from people here locally. I mean, from where I live in the Highlands, it's about 45 minutes. So it takes me just as long to get to O'Bannon as it does to get to the Parklands. I mean, there's 34 miles, including that like 20 something miles of the adventure trail, which is rugged. I always like to think before North Carolina, like that's what I'll ride. It's definitely got some climbs and some hike-a-bike. But the in the park trails are, Breeden Ridge is the one trail that seem to really love at that park. So Breeden Ridge is, it has two different sides to it. One is like super more rocky, which you can descend, and it's really fun that way. But you can also climb if you want to do the full loop. That comes down. You can take that from the campground, which is great because you have bathrooms and water and stuff there. The other side of Breeden is fun, flowy jumps. It's got a little bit of everything. It's quick. And then Potato Run is the climb back up. That's the easiest. But Potato Run is a super fun trail to come down. I would say probably one of the easier ones in the park if you want to come down that. But most people climb it. It's an easy gradual climb up, not bad. Group Camp Trail, I think you had highlighted that one. Yeah. That's a technical, it's rocky in sections. It's definitely got some punchy climbs to it. It's super fun. I mean, I hated that trail the first time I rode it. I definitely took a pedal to the shin and was like bleeding everywhere, but I was like, nope, I'm going to do this. And then now it's the trail I ride every time. So the more you ride things, of course, the more you find kind of where you like them. And it's definitely good for progression and stuff. But yeah, O'Bannon is where we focus a lot of energy, just because, we have the ability to work on things. And there was a plan for a reroute trail from one of the adventure trail areas that floods really bad when you come down. So it was kind of impassable at points. So there's a reroute trail that we started before COVID. And then when COVID started, O'Bannon actually was closed for several months. So we kind of got delayed on that. So there's tons of trail days that keep coming up, and that's kind of what it's for. So if you're someone who's never dug a completely new trail, this would be the trail day for you. Just because, it's really cool to see, from where you start to where you end up. And then when you ride that trail, you're like, wow, I like helped build this. And it gives you a good understanding of like why trails are purposely built certain ways. And it's kind of fun, and you meet a lot of new people.
So is most of the sort of the trail development work, is it kind of in this area? And then this is like the Outback Trail?
Yeah, the Adventure Trail, there's a big event that O'Bannon does every year. It's called the Adventure Ride, and we will go weed eat that whole thing. We're really lucky that there's a trail runner who actually helps us weed eat, because he loves to get out on that adventure trail, and he does a lot of the weed eating, and it's great. A lot of hikers and trail runners will utilize that stuff as well. So it's kind of nice to see people come together that just aren't the mountain bikers.
Yeah.
So that section, those all get weed eated, but very minimal work. It's kind of the way it is, except for this reroute that obviously we're kind of hand cutting in, and there is a machine out there now. So that's kind of helped a lot.
Yeah, cool.
But most of the work stays in the Breeden area. Group camp gets some, stuff, and the Fire Tower Trail it has a lot of like seepage to it and stuff. So it's constantly getting some tweaks.
Good deal. So I see that you've got like an events calendar page out here, and it's early in the season, so there's not much out here now, but just talk to me a little bit about the kind of events you do. You mentioned a little bit about the February event. You can talk more about that, and then whatever other kind of events that KyMBA Louisville typically gets into.
Typically, we have a big fundraising event in February. So the way that event's always been is we get like tons of raffle items, silent auction items, and things like that. And this year, with all the COVID stuff, number one, the bike industry is kind of like at a shortage. It's hard to get stuff right now. And we were like, I don't know how that's going to work. We usually relied on local businesses. We were kind of like, not everybody's had a great year this year. So that plus all the restrictions, usually it's a really social event. We had over 200 people show up last year from like what we could kind of count. The year before, we had a private room. We still had well over 100 people. Like you could barely move. So we're like, with the restrictions, we just didn't feel like people could really kind of hang out, and venues were not going to be too interested in that. Gatherings were supposed to be small, and we talked about doing it online, and we're like, that's kind of like lost the, what it's supposed to be about. So hopefully we can do something like later on in the year as like some kind of fun event, just because we didn't get to do that one. But typically that's a big one. I had said we did a movie premiere a while back where we had it actually at a distillery here called Copper and Kings. They have an outdoor like theater space kind of. So we went ahead and did that, and they had ping pong tables out, and it was fun. People got to socialize. So that's kind of nice. So I'm hoping like we could do some more, events once some of this restriction stuff lifts, so people can kind of get out, see each other, like reconnect for rides. We've previously been doing group rides, but we kind of put that on the back burner too. So we're like, we were getting on a Tuesday like 30 people, and we're like, wow, if everybody at home, like how many people did you get? Everything's just kind of stalled.
When you were doing group rides, where did those typically take place? Did they kind of move around, or they were a particular park? Or
we did two Tuesdays and Thursdays were at Cherokee. The Tuesday was like fun. There was a quick pace, medium pace, slower pace. It was for fun. And then Thursday was a faster ride. And then there was another group doing some rides out at the Parklands. So we were doing some different things, but that kind of all has been put off. So I'm like,
Sure.
hopefully things, you want everybody to be safe and you want to be able to social distance, and talking about some of that, we're like, God, like some of our parks don't have anywhere to like stop. That's great for that. Plus with all the other people. So we're like, when things kind of start to ease up, and with people getting the vaccine and stuff, like hopefully that'll kind of.
Yeah, but it's good to know that you
that
guys, it's not that you just work hard together, but you play hard together as well, sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah.
At least
And I mean,
historically.
yeah, like it's kind of one of those things you want to, ride with people, and you still run into everybody, you're like, hey, but definitely just kind of being cautious. Like, you don't want to, be getting anybody sick or anything like that. And you don't want to be the ones who look, like we're bad stewards or, ambassadors of mountain biking by just doing whatever and not being cautious. So.
Yeah, sign of the times, unfortunately. So in terms of joining, if someone is interested in joining KyMBA Louisville, talk to me about how they go about doing that.
You can join through our website. There's this like little convenient button. So you can click that, and then it takes you directly to KyMBA. Yep. So then you go ahead and you just pick that you want to select. So there's our stuff, and you can pick what you want to donate. And it'll send us an email. We know that you've joined. There's also a way just to donate. Like if you're, not even from the area and you want to donate to help trails or whatever, there's a way on our website. There's like a little donate button, and it goes to our PayPal.
So tell me a little bit about, and again, I like to bear in mind, because particularly one of the silver linings of the cloud that is COVID is that a lot more people, got on bikes in 2020. And so we have a fair amount of new cyclists and new mountain bikers. So for people who may not be familiar, tell me a little bit about KyMBA and, their relationship to KyMBA Louisville.
So KyMBA's kind of, the main deal that supports many chapters. So they kind of help facilitate, several things for us. They kind of keep our member database, which is super easy for, us to use newsletters and different things. Or if our insurance, I know we've done some of that stuff through them, or if we have questions about things like that, they can kind of direct us to someone. Or if we have questions about anything about, what's the best way to handle, land managers or certain things like that, they're a good asset for that. Before the COVID thing, we actually were talking to one of the directors, park directors here, about going to they're doing a trail, it's like a trail school kind of thing in Bentonville. So you can send like land managers, they can kind of hear the whole overview about, Bentonville's unbelievable. Like you can't believe how many trails that they have, and they're constantly building them. So for someone that maybe is a little apprehensive about trails, to go see kind of how it works, what a great impact it is for communities and stuff, especially with like tourism dollars. I mean, KyMBA, it works with the trail school there. And I think that's a great asset for, anybody that's kind of having people they just don't get it. They can hear it from us a million times, but if you hear it from other, park directors and, people who have had successes with it. I've talked to people, Indiana does the DNR, and the DNR had said, they went to one and they were like, wow, like to see kind of how they've done it is really impressive. And I'm like, I think it's sometimes better to have like professional people kind of that speak their language saying that. So I think that's a great thing that they're providing.
Yeah. So KyMBA is the International Mountain Bicycle Association, and then KyMBA Louisville is a chapter of KyMBA. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And so when you're joining, are you in essence joining KyMBA as well if you join KyMBA Louisville?
Yes, they actually take a portion of, because they do manage things for some of our stuff. So they do take a portion of, what our membership fees are, for those things, which is totally understandable. So you kind of are sort of both.
And so these different, amounts, is this basically just that some people want to, if you feel, it's sort of like a minimum level membership, and then you can give more if you want to give more? Is that kind of it, or is there different levels of membership, or how does that work?
I think the lowest you can do is $39, but I don't think there's anything different. I think it's just based on like what you want to give.
Okay.
There are like family memberships where you can add, like if you have family members, some people do that, but I think $39 is like the cheapest that you can do.
Okay. And that's if you do annual, and then I guess also through this site, looks like you can get some KyMBA socks, I guess,
if you donate your $50, you get your socks.
And then there's like a magazine subscription potential.
Yeah.
Bike
I've never done.
Okay.
I've never done the magazine. I kind of don't even take the socks anymore, because I'm like, just put the money back to
right.
Socks. But there is an option too that you don't have to do yearly. You can do monthly, and some people just have an auto set up where it takes out, I think it's $5 a month. You hear all those commercials like, for the price of a cup of coffee,
right.
You can donate to trails. Instead of, you could do it that way. It's just kind of however, but everything kind of helps, if we don't have anybody, to join us, then, it kind of looks, it's a two-part thing. Like, the money is great and the volunteer hours are also great, but sometimes being able to say like, hey, we have 176 people who kind of support this, that's kind of where those numbers come into like a bigger picture. Because if you're talking to a park and you're like, hey, we'd really like to do this, and you have 50 people, well, guess what? You have 50 people and they're not going to be like too interested in that. So the more people you have, the better off it looks. You have more numbers, and I think, sometimes people don't see that part either. We have to show we have a voice and like a community and people who support this, not just like a couple people who, are constantly engaging with these, different land managers. And, that really is essentially who tells us yes or no for things. The parks are not KyMBA's property. They're for everybody. So we kind of have to understand that we have to work with them, but having more members kind of gives us a little more backing. Like, hey, we have, however many people.
Yeah, absolutely. All that's very good points to make. So in terms of contacting you guys, I see that there's actually a contact form out here on the site, but then you also have some other social media presence as well. So can you talk to me a little about sort of what's the best way to kind of keep up to date with what's happening with KyMBA Louisville?
If you ever have questions, or, we try to answer these emails as quickly as we can. Sometimes things kind of get lost in the shuffle and it takes a little bit. And, there are several people who do see those emails. So, following up, make sure somebody did answer is always kind of a thing. But as far as what we're doing, our Facebook, we usually, anytime there's a trail day or if there's an event or any of that stuff, we try to include that. Like, you'll see the abandoned trail days on there for this weekend, or, different things like BMX track. They had closed. I guess people had been riding when it was wet. Also, yeah. So I'm like,
education.
And we try to be, with so many new riders, like, you kind of have to explain to people, like, yeah, I get it. They're mountain bikes, and like some places you can totally ride when it's wet, but like, unfortunately, our soil and the way it is, this area is not one of them. So just kind of trying to get people to understand and to educate people instead of say being rude or people don't always know. You want to be a good
definitely education component to all this for sure.
Yeah.
And then you also have this Instagram
Yeah.
page.
Yep, we have Instagram, which will be again trail days.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, and then we always post pictures like of things we've done or you know, different stuff. And we did joke that we were going to have goats for a trail day, and we got a lot of emails on that because people were like, "Are you guys seriously going to have goats?" And we're like, "No." No, I don't think we can bring goats into the park. Well, maybe we could, I don't know, but no, we did not have goats. And these were our raffle items.
You know, they may cover a lot of ground, but I don't think you can dictate, you know, exactly where they're going to go.
No, and like they're cute, and goat yoga is like really fun, but yeah, I don't know that goats would have been affected. That you could see
probably not the best solution for trails, but. So I assume that it's fair to say that you're not a one-woman show in terms of leadership in your club there. So tell me a little bit about some of the movers and shakers in your organization.
So we have a vice president who's Josh Tenen. Josh is like super helpful. There have been some things that have come up recently in the area. We have another park here, Iroquois, that they had been talking about possibly putting mountain bike trails in, and that got kind of pulled out. So he kind of went everywhere to try to figure out like what's the problem, you know, emailed council, park people, and he's great about, you know, really trying to kind of dig into things and trying to find out about like, you know, where we can get some extra access or how we can, you know, kind of try to partner with that stuff. So, you know, he's been great. There's Derek Vetko has been, you know, around for a long time. He's a local shop owner here. He does a lot of trail days. Me and Derek have actually been friends from like BMX stuff. So he's, you know, in different facets of riding, and he's led some group rides and done a lot of stuff. And most people in Louisville kind of know him.
Is Derek with On Your Left?
Yes, yeah, he's one of the owners of On Your Left. You know, they're kind of two of our people, and Jonathan has been our treasurer for quite some time. So sometimes when, you know, me being newer, if I'm like, hey, I don't remember something, you know, he's been around for a while, so it's great to have someone that has kind of some history. And we have another lady, Laura, who's an awesome photographer, and she's really been trying to help us like build up some photos, especially from, you know, trail days or, you know, just people out doing stuff and just showing kind of the community having fun. So that's been great to have, you know, someone who can kind of help document things so that we have content, you know, when we send out a newsletter or if we send out certain stuff. And it's great, you know, you can just ask for like, hey, do you have a picture of this or, you know, that or whatever. So we have definitely some great people. And then as far as O'Bannon, there's a guy, Jason Wise, who kind of leads all the trail stuff out there. Jason has really been like great, you know, trying to get stuff going and always keep it kind of updated and having a good relationship with the park and stuff. So there's definitely, you know, quite a few people. There's, you know, more people, I'm sure. Our website actually was redesigned recently with all that fun, you know, the plugins for Trail Forks, and a guy named Ben did that, which was great because I think it looks like pretty up to date. It kind of looks a little cooler, and so he helped with that. So there's, you know, definitely people that come in and help with stuff, and especially like fundraising. You know, when we do the fundraiser, we get a lot of help from a lot of people. So and I actually solicit some of my friends to help that don't even ride bikes or do ride bikes somewhat, but I mean, it's kind of definitely a community effort. I pull a lot of like, I ask help from people I know that have previously been part of KyMBA that like I just know that I ask questions to. Our former president Brad, I like, you know, ask him things. So it's great to kind of know that you have people to rely on, and if you have a question about something that's happened previously, like there's always someone I can go to, and I always feel like everyone's pretty open and great about stuff like that. And I do.
Good deal.
Like that.
Good deal. Well, are there any new developments on the horizon for KyMBA Louisville coming in 2021 that you'd like to highlight?
Somebody once told me you never say anything about trails until a shovel's in the ground, because then for the next 5 years, everybody will ask you. So, you know, there's O'Bannon is obviously, we're doing a reroute. That's kind of a big thing because that got stalled. That should have already been done. So, you know, there's definitely there's some things kind of about, but nothing.
Yeah. So
nothing's
things you're
solid.
exploring, but nothing you're at a point where you can announce yet. Huh?
No.
Okay, that's fine. So is there anything I haven't asked you about already that you'd like to share with the Kentucky cycling audience?
I hope everybody's just like, during all this crazy COVID stuff, just be nice. Like, people totally need that. I think, if you're passing that dog walker, like, I know that you really want to get your time in and everything, but just be kind of cognizant that sometimes people just need a little, hey, how's it going and stuff. And I think I've noticed that a lot lately with myself, is kind of why I say that, because I've definitely run into some older ladies that are super happy when you stop and you talk to their dog, and just kind of, we are a community, and we should treat it that way. So be nice to everybody.
Good deal. Well, Nicole, I want to thank you again for being a guest in the Kentucky Cycling Connection series and for talking to us about the work of KyMBA Louisville.
Awesome, thanks.
As always, we hope you found this content useful. If you did, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks.